Hey y'all, it's me Trish. I am the Witch of the Dismal Swamp. How in the hell's everybody doing today? Alright. I decided to finish where I had ended, or not finish, but pick up where I left off on my Salem Witch Trials book. If you haven't watched the last video, it starts from January 1 to the 13th, and then from the 14th on is where I'm starting now. I don't know how far I'm going to go. I'm going to try to make it to the end of January. So this might be a little bit longer than usual kind of video, but I want to start next video in February. Okay? Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start so this isn't a really, really long video, because I know y'all don't like that. Alright, January 14th, 1692 was a Thursday, and this is taking place in Boston. Alright, here we go. Gotta get the crease where I can see it. Almanacs predicted cold, windy weather to clear the sky and to make travel easier, perhaps for those attending lecture. Acting Governor Simon Bradstreet and the General Court had already proclaimed the lecture day a public feast, or a public fast, a day to contemplate society's shortcomings and to pray for help to correct them. Cotton Mather addressed his Boston listeners on the need for spiritual awakening. A sinful sleep is indeed a deeply sleep. It is a stupefying and a venomous bed of nightshade whereupon men lie when they sleep in sin. It was his and others' long-held opinion that New England churches were in danger of complacent stagnation. The people needed a reformation where the individuals would re-examine and re-evaluate their lives. Congregations would rededicate themselves to their rightful purposes. Okay? Now we're on January 15th of 1692. It's a Friday, and it's in Salem Village. Reverend Samuel Parris purchased a triangular 2-acre orchard off the Meeting House Road from John Shepherd, a village man who had moved to Rowley after his first wife's death. Parris considered the plot from its white oak tree to a heap of boundary stones, found it worth L10 investment, and signed the deed. Now, I think L10 is lira. If I'm not correct, y'all let me know. Okay, so he got it for, I'm assuming, lira 10. At home, meanwhile, his niece Abigail was not yet noticeably ill. She won't sick yet, y'all. All seemed as before, but from Tituba's later confession, it would appear that dramatic and astonishing events had occurred beneath the routine of ordinary life. Okay, Tituba, I explained to y'all who she was in my last video. Okay, all right, here we go. As Tituba dropped off to sleep, she saw a tall, darkly clad, white-haired man standing by her. I'll tell you what. Somebody standing next to me like that, it's on Donkey Kong. Nobody gonna come in mine. Nope. He planned to kill the children. Uh-oh. He announced, and she said, and she, Tituba, wait a minute, I'll start that sentence over. As Tituba dropped off to sleep, she saw a tall, darkly clad, white-haired man standing by her. He planned to kill the children, he announced, and she, Tituba, would help him, or he would kill her too. He was a god, he confided, and looked pleased when Tituba appeared. She appeared to believe him. She must believe in him, he insisted, flourishing a document. If she served him faithfully for 6 years, only 6 years, like a bondservant's term, not the perpetual servitude of a slave, he would give her many fine things. But if she declined, he would treat her as he meant to treat the children. Now we're on January 16th through the 19th of 1692, which is a Saturday through Tuesday. And it's in Salem Village. All right, the spirit came again to offer bribes in the form of creatures like small bright birds, green, white, and yellow. But Tituba defied him. He was no god, she declared. This was a matter for her master. But when she headed for the stairs in Paris's study, the man-devil stopped her roughly. She was to serve him now, he repeated, and promised to return on Wednesday. So keep that in mind. He's going to come back Wednesday. Okay, outside the weather remained windy while sleet and snow hid the young moon. Okay, indoors the adult Parises at last noticed Betty and Abigail's worsening symptoms. They found the girls crouched under chairs and gabbled phrases neither they or nor anyone else could understand. So they was all up underneath the chairs and stools and twisted up and everything. And then they was saying stuff nobody knew. Abigail complained of pains in her head. Since Thomas and baby Susanna were not mentioned in any of the accounts, presumably they were not affected. Okay. Now we're on Wednesday, January 20th of 1692 in Salem Village. While Reverend and Miss Paris were in the parlor with Betty and Abigail, Tituba stood in the other room, which was the hall, well within earshot of the girls' cries. Suddenly, as her later testimony detailed, 4 women appeared in one corner of the hall while the man-devil just as suddenly materialized behind Tituba. He gripped her firmly. "Go," he commanded, "and do hurt to them, and pinch them." She had to go up and pinch him. Okay? The 6 moved across the entry to the parlor, where the Parises neither looked up nor noticed that anyone else was there, for the devil had enchanted them. Tituba refused to harm the children, so the witches swarmed around her and hauled her across the room and forced her hands to pinch Betty and then Abigail. So they forced her to do it. The women vanished after the victory. But the man-devil wasn't finished. Okay? Reverend Paris, he said, would pray now as usual. And he would read a biblical passage and, to see if she understood, would ask Tituba to tell him about it. But she would not remember. The man-devil emphasized, not any of it. He promised to return on Friday and show her the book. Only 6 years of service, he repeated. That was all he required. In the visible world, and it was St. Agnes Eve, a date between winter and spring in European latitudes, and the traditional time for fortune-telling. In New England, where neither Saint's Day nor divination was encouraged, the customs were nevertheless part of the culture. Some of the more curious or anxious people may have tried them, young girls mostly, wanting to divine their future husbands. Girls back in the Northumberland used hard-boiled eggs. The yolks were removed and replaced with salt. A girl ate one, shell and all, I would think that too much salt would be really bad. I mean, I would think that'd be a lot of salt, right? A girl ate all of it, shell and all, with the proper rhymes and motions, hoping to dream of her future husband, so that she would recognize him in the real life. The charm was not unlike the egg and glass project that had frightened at least 2 village girls into fits. At some time this winter, Widow Johnson of Andover and her daughter turned a sieve to learn if the widow's absent brother-in-law, Moses Haggett, were alive or dead. By St. Peter and St. Paul, they recited using a charm that their minister's maid had told them. If Haggett be dead, let the sieve turn around. If the sieve jerked around, but it lied, for Haggett was alive. January 22nd of 1692. Okay, this is Friday. Salem Village. A man-devil arrived early Friday morning to tell Tituba that she must sign his book with her blood. He handed her a pin tied to a stick so he could prick her finger. But before he could slip the book from his pocket, Miss Parris called for Tituba from the other room, and then he vanished. Now we're on January 23, 1692, Saturday, Salem Village. Salem Village wasn't finished with its petition to the town by any means. Joseph Putnam wrote an official order for a village meeting to be held the following lecture day and had the notice tacked to the message post outside of the meeting house. Now we're on Salem Village. It doesn't have a date. As the moon waxed full, apparitions continued to plague Tituba, as she later testified. A hog or a great black dog would suddenly leap from the shadows and command, "Serve me," before assuming the shape of a man. Sometimes he had a little yellow bird with him or a pair of cats, one red, the other one black, about the size of a small dog. The witches also returned to torment her, and while the 2 from Boston were yet unknown to her, she recognized the others now as Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne, both of Salem Village. These are 2 of the 6 witches that she's recognizing. Okay? Now, where did I just stop it at? Okay. "Serve me," the devil repeated. "Serve me." Until Tituba signed his book with her own blood in a crescent shape. She saw 9 other marks on the page, some red, some yellowish. 2 of them, the devil said, were Goods and Osborne's. Okay. Okay, I'm just reading a little note at the bottom of the book. It ain't nothing I'm going to read. Okay, January 24th, 1692, Sunday, Boston. Now we're in Boston. In Boston, the Sabbath weather was temperate enough for Governor Bradstreet to attend the afternoon service at South Meeting House the first time, as Samuel Sewall noted. The old man had ventured to meetings all January. Now we're on January 25 of 1692. It's a Monday in York, Maine. Nevertheless, snow was falling thickly on the coast of Maine that Monday morning when Shabeel Dummer, D-U-M-M-E-R, the minister of York, stepped from his door. He swung into the horse's saddle and was shot dead. The neighbors, hearing gunfire, realized they were under attack by a band of French and Abenaki and ran for the block houses. So they was under attack, y'all. About 50 English died in the first rush. Even French accounts said women and children were killed. And about 70 to 100 were taken prisoner. Keeping out of the range of the blockhouses, the attackers burnt the other buildings, slaughtered horses and cattle, and swept all outlying farms within 5 miles. Remembering Doomer's past reluctant to return certain captives, the invaders stripped and mutilated his corpse. Ooh. Before they marched off their hostages, they sent back the youngest children and the oldest women. A mercy proffered. Say, I get it out, y'all. In return for the Indian women and children spared in an earlier English attack. Doomer's widow was among those freed. Yet afterward she shuttled back and forth to the raiders' camp so often, begging for the release of her son, that they took her with the rest of the hostages. So she went back so much, they just said, to hell with it. You want to come? You can stay. Captain John Flood's militia arrived from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, in time to pursue the party only a short way before losing them. The survivors could do little but contemplate the ashes of ruined York and the hacked body of its late minister. Many had advised Doomer to leave such a dangerous frontier area. The congregation could hardly pay him, yet he stayed. All right, now we're on January 26th, 1692. It's a Tuesday in Boston. Assistants William Stratton and Samuel Sewall, among others, presided over Suffolk County Quarterly Court at Boston, and John Goodwin, father of the once bewitched children, served as one of the trial jurors. Most of the cases involved property and debts. Reverend Peter Thatcher of Milton petitioned for possession of his late father's Boston house and land from his widowed stepmother, Margaret Thatcher, who, as everyone knew, was already wealthy thanks to inheritance from her father and her first husband. The jury found for the petitioner, but the stepmother appealed. Anthony Cheekley, who had represented the absent Captain John Alden in earlier court cases, sued him for the L5 back pay. The jury found for Alden this time, but the court dismissed Alden's own suit against Mark Emerson for defamation of character. The former hostage had told all and sundry how, during his 2.5-year captivity in Maine, he had often seen old Alden sell the Indians powder and shot. No, S-H-O-D, shot. I'm okay, y'all. Okay, let's continue. So he was seen selling powder and shot to the Indians. In the midst of all the legal bustle, Boston heard the sobering news of York. It was sad enough for Assistant Samuel Sewall, a distant cousin of Reverend Doomer, but the news would terrify those like the Boston serving maid Mercy Short, who had lived through just such an attack on Salem Falls and had been taken captive to Quebec. Yet amid this disaster, the happier news that their own Sir William Phipps was now Captain General and Governor-in-Chief of the Province of Massachusetts Bay in New England. New England being everything between New York and Newfoundland. What joy Lady Mary Phipps felt at this elevation was offset by her recollection of the horoscope in one of her husband's trunks. Years before he made his mark in the world, he had explained to her, after she first discovered the document, when he was in London, an old neighborhood astrologer, whom he hardly knew, presented him with a prediction of notable events in his life. Lady Phipps had marveled at the predictions. His finding a great treasure as he had, and being entrusted overseas by the king, as he was, to be followed by adversity and the nearly ruinous reproaches of enemies whom he would, however, outlast for a 13-year rule and a peaceful retirement. With the king granting Phipps the governorship, those predictions seemed to exact to be safe, too much of a coincidence to be within human knowledge. Lady Phipps could no longer bear to have the horoscope in her house, so she burned it. Now we're on January 27 of 1692, Wednesday, Wells, Maine. One young man captured at York escaped to Wells with his tale of attackers shooting and hacking victims amongst the flames. George Burroughs, minister of Wells and once of Salem village, had himself barely escaped more than one raid in Maine. With the county seat at York burned, moreover, all public records of his various deeds and land grants were destroyed. But today's appearance of two Indians with a flag of truce was more pressing than his own personal concerns. The English, the messenger said, might ransom the captives at Sagadahoc in a fortnight, 3 weeks at most. Burroughs immediately sent this news south to the Massachusetts governor and council. January 28th, 1692, a Thursday, Salem Village. I hope y'all are enjoying this. Almanacs predicted wet weather, wind, and cold. The Salem area lecture was held in the village meeting house, and afterward the village men stayed behind for their meetings. They reconfirmed the earlier committee and its demands to Salem town, and clarified that if they were allowed to care for their own poor and for their own roads, they would still pay all county rates along with Salem. The village men decided to meet March 1st to discuss the results of these negotiations. On January 29, 1692, Friday is in Salem. In the Northfields area of Salem, halfway between the village and town, 80-year-old George Jacob Sr. dictated his will. He could neither read nor write. He bequeathed the homestead to his wife Mary for a lifetime, to their son George after her, and then George's son, also named George. But if either son or grandson died early, it would pass to Jacob's daughter, Anne, and her husband, John Andrews. Are y'all going to remember all that? Grandchildren would get the movables, with George Jr.'s daughter, Margaret, receiving certain household goods from the gun room, plus one milk cow. Well, she gets the cow, man. But in spite of age and rheumatism, old Jacobs was very much alive. He was still vigorously in charge, even though the imperious old man had to stump about with the help of 2 walking sticks. He could still balance on one and strike the maid servant Sarah Churchill with the other one. January 31 of 1692. This one might be my last. Yeah, it's the last passage until we get to February. So I'm almost done, y'all. If you're still there, hit the thumbs up. Let me know y'all hearing it all. Okay, January 31st, 1692. Sunday in Maine. Almanacs predicted raw weather as the moon waned into its last quarter. Eastward in the wintry wilderness this Sabbath, the York hostages watched as one of their Indian captors, dressed in the late Reverend Doomer's clothes, parodied a sermon. Doomer's widow died soon after. Her death hastened the others' captive thought by sorrow. So they think she died because she was so sad. So she died soon after he was killed. So that is the end of January. Next video will be February. Now, I don't know how long February is. Let me look right quick. Okay. So February, I don't know, we'll wing it, y'all. I will hit February in my next video. We're going to start at February 1, 1692. It's going to be in Salem town. All right. All right, y'all. I hope y'all enjoyed this. I know I am. You're learning a little bit of history, you know, from 1692. And then you're also learning what's happening, which this is what's I'm finding so interesting. What do y'all think about Tituba? Y'all think she's being brainwashed? I personally think she is, but that's me. That's what I've read so far. Now, I don't know. I'm going to have to keep going before I come to my final conclusion on it. But so far, what do y'all think? All right. That's it, y'all. I send y'all so freaking much love, and thank you all for hanging in there and watching this. I'll see y'all in my next video. Y'all be well and safe. Toodles, y'all.